The horse's hooves thundered into Chloride, New Mexico territory, carrying a dying man and his desperate plea that would change 2 lives forever. Ryder Vance had never expected his best friend to show up at his ranch with blood seeping through his shirt and a request that would bind him to a woman he had never met. But there was Teresa Easton, slumped against his saddle, gray-faced and shaking, begging Ryder to promise something impossible. "My sister," Thomas gasped, gripping Ryder's arm with surprising strength for a man who had been shot twice. "Teresa, she's coming on the afternoon stage. You have to marry her, Ryder. Promise me." Ryder stared at his friend, wondering if fever had taken his mind. "What are you talking about?" "You need a doctor. No doctor can fix this." Thomas coughed and blood flecked his lips. "Those men, the Donnelly gang, they are not just after me. They know about Teresa. They know she exists, and they will use her to get to our father's land deed. If she is married, if she is your wife, the law protects her differently. They cannot touch what is yours." The words came out in a rush, desperate and pleading. Ryder had known Thomas since they were boys, had fought alongside him in skirmishes with raiders, had trusted him with his life more times than he could count. But this was different. This was marriage, a sacred bond, not some business arrangement. "Thomas, there has to be another way." "There is not." Thomas's eyes were dimming, his breathing shallow. "I sent her a telegram 2 weeks ago, told her to come here, told her you would take care of her. She has no one else. Our parents are dead. Our uncle wants the land for himself and does not care what happens to her. Please, Ryder. I am dying, and I need to know she will be safe." Ryder looked into his friend's fading eyes and saw the truth there. Thomas had maybe an hour, perhaps less. The bullets had done their work too well, and they were 30 miles from the nearest real doctor. Even if they started riding now, Thomas would not make it. "I promise," Ryder heard himself say, and he meant it. Even though the words felt like chains wrapping around his future, Thomas smiled, relief flooding his features. "She is good, Ryder. Kind. She deserves better than this, but you are a good man. The best I know." His hand went slack, and his breathing stopped a moment later. Ryder sat with his friend's body for a long time, watching the New Mexico sun climb higher in the sky, wondering what in God's name he had just agreed to. He was 32 years old, had built his ranch from nothing, and had carefully avoided any entanglements that might tie him down. He liked his life simple, his days predictable. Women had come and gone, but none had made him want to change his solitary existence. Now he was going to marry a complete stranger because his dying friend had asked him to. He buried Thomas on a hillside overlooking the valley, marking the grave with a simple wooden cross. Then he rode into Chloride to meet the afternoon stage, his stomach tight with dread and duty. The town was small but growing, fueled by the silver mines that dotted the surrounding hills. Ryder knew most everyone, and news of Thomas's death would spread fast. He would have to explain the marriage quickly, get it done before questions arose that he could not answer. The stage rolled in at 3 o'clock, dust billowing behind its wheels. Ryder stood outside the general store, hat in hand, watching as the driver climbed down and opened the door. A woman emerged, and Ryder felt something shift in his chest. She was not what he had expected. Teresa Easton was small, barely reaching his shoulder, with dark hair pinned back from a face that was more interesting than beautiful. Her eyes were the color of whiskey, amber and bright, and they swept across the town with an intelligence that made him straighten his spine. She wore a simple gray traveling dress, dusty from the journey, and carried a worn carpetbag. "Teresa Easton?" he asked, stepping forward. She turned those amber eyes on him, and he saw wariness there mixed with exhaustion. "Yes, you must be Ryder Vance. My brother wrote about you." "I am sorry," he said, and the words came out rougher than he intended. "Thomas is dead. He was shot yesterday. He died this morning." The color drained from her face and she swayed. Ryder caught her elbow, steadying her, feeling how delicate her bones were beneath the fabric of her dress. "How?" she whispered. "The Donnelly gang. They ambushed him on the road." Ryder paused, then pushed forward with the rest of it. "Before he died, he made me promise to marry you for your protection. He said they know about you, about the land." Teresa pulled away from him, her face going from pale to flushed with anger. "He had no right to arrange my life like that. I am not a child to be passed from hand to hand." "I know," Ryder said, and he meant it. "But he was my friend and I gave my word. The Donnellys are dangerous. If they think you are alone, unprotected, they will come after you. As my wife, you would have the protection of my name, my ranch. The law sees it differently. I do not even know you." Her voice shook, but she held her ground, chin lifted in defiance. "I know. But your brother trusted me, and I am offering you safety. Nothing more, nothing less. We can make it a marriage in name only if you want. You would have your own room, your own space. I am just keeping a promise to a dying friend." Teresa looked at him for a long moment, and Ryder felt weighed and measured by those amber eyes. Finally, she nodded, her shoulders slumping with defeat. "Very well. But I want to see my brother's grave first." They rode out to the hillside in silence, Teresa sitting behind him on his horse because she had no mount of her own. She held herself stiffly, not quite touching him, and Ryder could feel the tension radiating from her small frame. At the grave, she knelt in the dirt and wept, and Ryder stood back, giving her privacy. He had not cried yet for Thomas, and he wondered if that made him cold. But grief was a luxury he could not afford right now. There were too many things to arrange, too many threats to guard against. When Teresa finally stood, her face was streaked with tears and dust. "He was all I had left," she said quietly. "Our parents died of fever 3 years ago. We had an uncle, but he wanted to sell the land, and Thomas refused. That is when the trouble started." "The deed," Ryder said. "Thomas mentioned it. It is for a large parcel in Texas. Good land, near water, worth a lot of money to the right people." Teresa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Our uncle hired the Donnellys to convince Thomas to sell. When Thomas still refused, they started getting more aggressive. Thomas sent me away to St. Louis to stay with a friend, but he wrote to me 2 weeks ago saying he had found a solution, that I should come to Chloride. He never told me any of this," Ryder said, feeling a flash of anger at his dead friend. "He just showed up dying and made me promise." "That sounds like Thomas, always trying to protect everyone, never asking for help until it was too late." Teresa looked at the grave, then at Ryder. "If we do this, if we marry, I want your word that you will not try to take the land. It is mine, the last thing my parents left me." "I do not want your land," Ryder said flatly. "I have my own ranch, my own life. I am doing this because I promised a friend. That is all." Something flickered in Teresa's eyes, hurt maybe, but she nodded. "Then let us get this over with." They were married that evening by the circuit judge who happened to be passing through Chloride. The ceremony took all of 5 minutes, performed in the judge's hotel room with the hotel owner and his wife as witnesses. Ryder spoke the vows in a flat, dutiful voice, and Teresa's hands shook as she repeated them. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, neither of them moved to kiss. The judge raised an eyebrow but said nothing, pocketing Ryder's payment and wishing them well. Ryder took Teresa to his ranch as the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. The house was simple, a 2-bedroom structure he had built himself, with a barn and corrals for the horses. It was not much, but it was his, and he was proud of it. "You can have the bedroom on the left," he told Teresa as they dismounted. "I will take the one on the right. There is a lock on your door if you want it." Teresa looked at him, and for a moment he thought she might say something, but she just nodded and took her carpetbag inside. The first few weeks were awkward and tense. Teresa kept to herself mostly, cooking simple meals and cleaning the house without being asked. Ryder worked the ranch, tending to his cattle and horses, coming in only for supper and sleep. They spoke in polite, careful sentences, circling each other like wary animals, but Ryder found himself watching her when he thought she was not looking. The way she moved through the house, efficient and graceful. The way she hummed softly to herself when she thought she was alone. The way her face softened when she looked out at the sunset. A hint of the grief she carried always just beneath the surface. One evening, about 3 weeks after the wedding, Ryder came in from the barn to find Teresa struggling with a broken chair. She was trying to fix one of the legs, her face flushed with frustration. "Let me," he said, taking the chair from her. "I can do it," she protested, but he was already examining the break. "I know you can, but I am bigger and I have more leverage." He grabbed his tools and set to work, aware of her watching him. "You do not have to do everything yourself, you know. We are married. We can help each other." "A marriage of convenience," Teresa said quietly. "That is what this is it not? I am here because my brother made you promise." "You do not want a wife?" Ryder paused, considering his words carefully. "I did not want a wife before, but now that I have one, I figure we might as well make the best of it. That does not mean we have to be strangers." Teresa was silent for a moment, then she sat down at the table. "Tell me about Thomas. Tell me about what he was like here before." So Ryder told her. He told her about the times he and Thomas had worked cattle drives together, about the night they had fought off a pack of wolves threatening the herd, about the jokes Thomas used to tell, and the way he could charm anyone into anything. Teresa listened with hunger in her eyes, soaking up these pieces of her brother she had not known. "He talked about you," Ryder said, finishing the chair repair. "Not about the land or the trouble. Just about his little sister who was too smart for her own good and who once punched a boy for pulling her hair." Teresa laughed, a real laugh, and it transformed her face. "I was 10. The boy was 12 and twice my size. Thomas had to pull me off him." "He was proud of you," Ryder said. "I could hear it in his voice whenever he mentioned you." Tears welled in Teresa's eyes, but she smiled through them. "Thank you for telling me that." After that night, things changed. Slowly, carefully, they began to talk more. Teresa told him about her life in St. Louis, about the friend who had taken her in and the dresses she had sewn to earn money. Ryder told her about building the ranch, about his own parents who had died when he was 20, leaving him with nothing but a strong back and a stubborn streak. They fell into a routine. Ryder taught Teresa to ride, patient as she struggled with the big gelding he had chosen for her. She was terrified at first, gripping the saddle horn with white knuckles, but she refused to give up. After 2 weeks, she was riding well enough to accompany him on short trips around the ranch. Teresa started cooking more elaborate meals, experimenting with the limited supplies available. Some were disasters, like the biscuits that came out hard as rocks, but others were delicious. Ryder found himself looking forward to supper, to the way Teresa would watch his face as he took the first bite, anxious for his approval. "This is good," he would say, and her face would light up with pleasure. One afternoon, Ryder came back from checking the fence line to find Teresa in the barn trying to calm a spooked mare. The horse was wild-eyed and snorting, but Teresa stood her ground, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "Easy, girl. Easy now. No one is going to hurt you." The mare quieted gradually, responding to Teresa's calm presence. Ryder watched from the doorway, impressed. When Teresa finally got a hand on the mare's neck, stroking gently, he stepped forward. "You are good with her." Teresa jumped, startled, then smiled. She reminds me of a horse we had when I was young. Papa taught me that fear just makes them more afraid. You have to be calm, steady. Your father was right. Ryder moved closer, reaching out to stroke the mare's muzzle. His hand brushed Teresa's, and he felt a jolt of something he had not expected. Awareness. Attraction. He pulled back quickly, but not before he saw the flush creep into Teresa's cheeks. She felt it too. That night, lying in his bed, Ryder admitted to himself what he had been avoiding for weeks. He was attracted to his wife. More than attracted. He liked her quick mind and her stubborn determination. Liked the way she laughed at his dry jokes and the way she refused to back down from a challenge. Liked the way she had cried at Thomas's grave but had not let the grief destroy her. But she had married him out of necessity, not choice. She had agreed to a marriage in name only, and he was not going to go back on that agreement just because his feelings had changed. The next few weeks were torture. Ryder found himself hyper-aware of Teresa's presence. The way she moved through the house, the scent of lavender soap she used, the sound of her humming as she worked. He caught himself staring at her more than once and had to force his eyes away before she noticed. If Teresa was aware of his struggle, she did not show it. But Ryder noticed small changes in her too. The way she would linger when serving him supper, her hand resting on his shoulder for just a moment longer than necessary. The way she smiled more, laughed more easily. The way she had started wearing her hair down sometimes in the evenings, the dark waves cascading over her shoulders. It was during the spring roundup that everything came to a head. Ryder had hired 2 extra hands to help with the work, and they had been gathering cattle for 3 days straight. Teresa had insisted on coming along, refusing to be left at the ranch alone. "I can help," she had said, and Ryder had not had the heart to refuse her. She proved him right, working alongside the men without complaint. She could not rope as well as they could, but she had a good eye for spotting strays and was fearless about riding into the brush to flush them out. On the 3rd day, they were working a narrow canyon when a rattlesnake spooked Teresa's horse. The gelding reared, and Teresa, caught off guard, fell. She hit the ground hard and the horse bolted. Ryder's heart stopped. He was off his own horse and running before he even thought about it, reaching Teresa in seconds. She was gasping for air, the wind knocked out of her, but nothing seemed broken. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, running his hands over her arms and legs, checking for injuries. "I am fine," she wheezed. "Just lost my breath." Relief flooded through him, so intense it made his hands shake. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "You scared me," he said roughly. "Do not do that again." Teresa's arms came up around him, tentative at first, then stronger. "I am sorry." They stayed like that for a long moment, and Ryder became aware of how perfectly she fit against him, how right it felt to hold her. When he finally pulled back, her amber eyes were wide, searching his face. "Ryder," she started, but he shook his head. "Not here. Not now." He helped her to her feet, acutely aware of the 2 ranch hands watching from a discreet distance. "Let us get you back to the house." That evening, after the hands had ridden back to town, Ryder found Teresa sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He sat down beside her, struggling to find the right words. "I need to tell you something," he said finally. "And I need you to just listen until I am done." Teresa nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I married you because Thomas asked me to, because I gave my word. But somewhere along the way that changed." Ryder took a deep breath. "I like having you here, Teresa. I like the way you make this house feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep. I like your laugh and your stubbornness, and the way you refuse to give up on learning to ride even though you were terrified. I like you and I am attracted to you, and I know that is not what we agreed to, but I needed you to know." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "I am not asking you to change anything. I gave you my word that this could be a marriage in name only, and I will keep that word. But I wanted to be honest with you about how I feel." Teresa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You are such an idiot," she said, and then she kissed him. It was awkward at first, both of them out of practice, but it quickly deepened into something more. Ryder cupped her face in his hands, marveling at how soft her skin was, how sweet she tasted. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Teresa laughed. "I have been waiting for you to say something for weeks," she admitted. "I thought I was going mad the way I felt about you. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, but you were so kind, so patient with me. And then I started noticing things. The way you always made sure I had the best piece of meat at supper. The way you fixed that wobbly step on the porch without saying anything because you knew it bothered me. The way you looked at me sometimes like I was something precious." "You are precious," Ryder said roughly. "You are the most precious thing in my life." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. When Ryder finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly, even though we are already married." Teresa laughed again, the sound full of joy. "That seems backwards." "Everything about us is backwards," Ryder pointed out, "but I do not care, I just want you to be happy." "I am happy," Teresa said softly. "For the first time since my parents died, I am truly happy." That night, they sat on the porch until the stars came out, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. When they finally went inside, Ryder walked Teresa to her bedroom door and kissed her good night, sweet and chaste. "I am going to do this right," he promised. "We have all the time in the world." The courtship that followed was sweet and sometimes ridiculous. Ryder brought Teresa wildflowers from the meadow, presented with awkward formality that made her giggle. He took her on picnics, spreading a blanket in the shade of a cottonwood tree and sharing stories of his childhood. He taught her to fish, laughing when she squealed at the feel of the wriggling trout. Teresa sewed him a new shirt, painstakingly stitching every seam. She baked him his favorite pie, apple with cinnamon, and glowed when he declared it the best thing he had ever tasted. She read to him in the evenings from the books she had brought from St. Louis, her voice bringing the words to life. They kissed often, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. Ryder discovered that Teresa loved having her neck kissed, that it made her gasp and melt against him. Teresa learned that Ryder was ticklish on his ribs, a fact she exploited mercilessly. But they went no further, both of them content to take things slow. Ryder had meant what he said about doing things right, and Teresa seemed to appreciate his patience. It was 2 months after their conversation on the porch when trouble found them again. Ryder was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when he heard the sound of approaching horses. Multiple riders moving fast. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, eyes scanning the horizon. 5 men rode into the yard, and Ryder recognized the leader immediately. Cobb Donnelly, the head of the gang that had killed Thomas. He was a big man, running to fat now but still dangerous, with cold eyes and a mean smile. "Well, well," Donnelly said, reining in his horse. "If it is not Ryder Vance, heard you got yourself married recently, to Thomas Easton's little sister, no less." "Get off my land," Ryder said flatly, raising the rifle. "Now, that is not very friendly." Donnelly dismounted, his men following suit. "We just want to have a conversation." "About a certain land deed." "I do not know anything about a land deed." "Sure you do. Your wife has it, the deed to that prime Texas property. We have been looking for it for a long time. Thomas refused to sell, but maybe you are more reasonable. The land is not for sale." "Everything is for sale for the right price." Donnelly took a step forward and Ryder clicked the rifle's safety off. The sound echoed in the yard. I said, "Get off my land." From the house, Teresa's voice rang out. Ryder, Donnelly's smile widened. There she is. Pretty little thing, is not she? Be a shame if something happened to her. Red rage flooded Ryder's vision. You threatening my wife? Just making an observation. Donnelly shrugged. Accidents happen all the time in the wild. Fires, stampedes, snakes. Would be terrible if your lovely bride had an unfortunate incident. Ryder. Teresa appeared on the porch and Ryder cursed inwardly. He had wanted her to stay inside, stay safe. Go back in the house, Teresa, he called. I will not. She came down the steps, and Ryder saw she was holding his pistol, the one he kept in the kitchen. Her hands were steady. You are Cobb, Donnelly. You killed my brother. Your brother was a fool who did not know when to cut his losses, Donnelly said. Do not make the same mistake, girl. Sell us that land and we will leave you in peace. No. Teresa, Ryder said urgently, go inside. I am not going anywhere. Teresa raised the pistol, aiming it at Donnelly. You murdered Thomas in cold blood. You think I am going to just hand over what he died protecting? Donnelly's men shifted, hands moving toward their own weapons. The situation was balanced on a knife's edge, and Ryder knew if shooting started, people were going to die. Teresa, please, he said quietly. Trust me. She hesitated, then slowly lowered the pistol, but she did not go inside. Ryder turned back to Donnelly. You are not getting the land. You are not getting anything except one chance to ride out of here before I start shooting, and I am a very good shot. You are one man with one rifle, Donnelly said. I have 5 men here and more back in town. Then I guess you better hope I shoot you first, Ryder said calmly. Because I promise you will be the first one to die. The 2 men stared at each other and the moment stretched. Finally, Donnelly laughed, but it was forced. This is not over, Vance. That land is worth too much money to just walk away from. It is over, Ryder said. Because if you or any of your men come onto my property again, I will kill you. That is not a threat. That is a promise. Donnelly mounted his horse, his men following suit. You are making a big mistake. The only mistake I made was not shooting you the moment you rode in. Ryder kept the rifle trained on Donnelly until the men were out of sight. When they were gone, Teresa ran to him and he caught her, holding her tight. I was so scared, she whispered. I thought he was going to kill you. I am fine. We are both fine. Ryder pulled back, looking at her seriously. But we need to talk about the land. Is the deed really that valuable? Teresa nodded. It is prime grazing land near the Brazos River. Thousands of acres. Papa bought it for almost nothing years ago before people realized how valuable land in that area would become. It is worth a fortune now. Then we need to sell it. No, Teresa said fiercely. It is all I have left of my family. It is going to get you killed, Ryder said bluntly. Donnelly is not going to give up. He will keep coming, keep threatening until he gets what he wants. The land is not worth your life. It is not about the money, Teresa said, tears streaming down her face. It is about keeping faith with Thomas, with my parents. They trusted me to keep it safe. Ryder cupped her face in his hands, wiping the tears with his thumbs. Your parents would not want you dead. Thomas would not want you dead. I certainly do not want you dead. We will find another way to honor their memory. I do not want to sell. I know. But sometimes we have to let go of things to protect what really matters. He kissed her forehead gently. And what really matters is you, safe and alive. They argued about it for the rest of the day, but in the end, Teresa reluctantly agreed. The next morning, Ryder rode into Chloride and sent a telegram to a land broker in Austin, offering the Texas property for sale. Within a week, he had 3 offers, all for substantial sums. He chose the highest one, and the sale was finalized within a month. The money was deposited in a bank in Santa Fe in Teresa's name only. Ryder refused to touch it. "It is yours," he told her. "From your family, I do not want any of it." "We are married," Teresa protested. "What is mine is yours. No, that money is yours to do with as you please. Save it, spend it, give it away. I do not care, but it is yours." Teresa looked at him for a long moment, then threw her arms around his neck. "I love you," she said. Ryder froze. They had not said those words yet, had been dancing around them for weeks. But now, hearing them, he realized how much he had wanted to hear them. "I love you too," he said roughly. "God help me, I love you so much it scares me." They kissed, deep and passionate, and Ryder felt something shift between them. A barrier breaking down, a final wall crumbling. That night, Teresa came to his bedroom door. She knocked softly, and when he opened it, she was standing there in her nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. "I do not want to sleep alone anymore," she said quietly. "I want to be your wife in every way if you want that too." Ryder's heart hammered in his chest. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I love you, Ryder. I want this. I want us." He pulled her into the room, closing the door behind her. "I love you too. And I will spend the rest of my life making you happy." What followed was tender and sweet, both of them nervous and eager at the same time. Ryder was gentle, patient, making sure Teresa was comfortable every step of the way. She was shy at first, but her natural boldness soon took over, and by the time they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Teresa's head on Ryder's chest, his arms around her. "I am glad Thomas made you promise," Teresa said softly. "I know that sounds awful, but I am glad, because otherwise I never would have met you, and I cannot imagine my life without you now." "I am glad too," Ryder admitted. "I thought I was happy before, but I did not know what happiness was. You showed me." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, and from that night on, they never slept apart again. The months that followed were the happiest of Ryder's life. He and Teresa settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. She took over managing the ranch's finances, her quick mind finding ways to save money and increase profits. He taught her everything he knew about ranching, and she proved to be an eager student. They talked about expanding the ranch, maybe buying some of the land adjacent to their property. Teresa was enthusiastic, drawing up plans and budgets with her careful hand. "We could have a real operation here," she said one evening, spreading her papers across the kitchen table. "Hire more hands, increase the herd. With the money from the Texas land, we could really build something." "I thought you did not want to spend that money," Ryder said, amused. "I do not want to waste it," Teresa corrected. "But investing it in our future, in our ranch, that is different. That is using it the way my parents would have wanted." Ryder looked at the plan she had drawn up, impressed despite himself. "You have really thought this through." "I have been thinking about it for weeks," Teresa admitted. "I wanted to make sure it was sound before I showed you. It is more than sound. It is brilliant." Ryder pulled her into his lap, kissing her soundly. "You are brilliant." Teresa blushed, pleased. "So we can do it." "We can do whatever you want," Ryder said. "This is your ranch as much as mine." They started the expansion that spring, buying 500 acres to the north and hiring 3 full-time hands. Teresa threw herself into the work with enthusiasm, learning to keep books and manage supplies. The ranch hands were initially skeptical of taking orders from a woman, but Teresa's competence and Ryder's unwavering support quickly won them over. One of the new hands, a young man named Jake, was particularly impressed. "Your wife has a head for numbers, boss," he told Ryder one day. "She saved us near 30% on feed by finding a better supplier." "I know," Ryder said, unable to keep the pride out of his voice. "She is smarter than all of us put together." By summer, the ranch was thriving. The herd had increased and they had started breeding horses as well as cattle. Teresa had the idea to focus on sturdy, reliable mounts, the kind that homesteaders and ranchers needed, rather than fancy show horses. "There is a bigger market for working horses," she explained. "And we can charge good prices because everyone knows Vance horses are well trained and dependable." She was right, as usual. By fall, they had sold a dozen horses and had orders for more. It was in October, as the desert air turned crisp and cool, that Teresa started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, she brushed it off as something she had eaten, but when it continued for a week, Ryder insisted on bringing the doctor out from chloride. Dr. Morrison was a gruff older man who had seen everything in his 40 years of practice. He examined Teresa thoroughly while Ryder paced outside the bedroom, anxious and worried. When the doctor finally emerged, he was smiling. "Congratulations, Vance. You are going to be a father." Ryder stared at him, the words not quite registering. "What? Your wife is expecting?" "About 2 months along, I would say. Should be a spring baby." Joy flooded through Ryder, so intense it almost brought him to his knees. He pushed past the doctor into the bedroom, where Teresa was sitting on the bed, her face glowing. "We are having a baby," she said, and her voice was filled with wonder. Ryder crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her as carefully as if she were made of glass. "Are you happy?" he asked, suddenly anxious. They had never talked about children, had been too busy with the ranch and each other. "I am so happy," Teresa said, laughing through tears. "I did not even know I wanted this until the doctor told me, but now I cannot imagine anything better." "I love you," Ryder said fiercely. "I love you so much. I love you too." The pregnancy was not easy. Teresa was sick for the first 3 months, barely able to keep anything down. Ryder hovered anxiously, bringing her crackers and ginger tea, rubbing her back when the nausea got bad. She bore it all with good humor, even when she was miserable. "This will pass," she would say, "and it will be worth it." As her belly grew, Ryder became even more protective. He would not let her ride anymore, would barely let her leave the house. Teresa bore it for a while, then put her foot down. "I am pregnant, not dying," she told him firmly. "I can still manage the accounts and work in the garden. You need to stop treating me like I am made of glass." "I am just worried," Ryder said. "What if something happens?" "Nothing is going to happen. Women have babies every day." Teresa took his hand, placing it on her swollen belly. "Feel that? That is our baby, strong and healthy. Everything is going to be fine." As if in response, the baby kicked and Ryder felt it against his palm. Wonder filled his face and Teresa laughed at his expression. "That is amazing," he breathed. "I know. It happens all the time now, especially at night when I am trying to sleep." Teresa made a face. "Our child is already keeping me up at night and it is not even born yet." Ryder kissed her, slow and sweet. "You are amazing. I do not tell you that enough." "You tell me every day," Teresa said, but she was smiling. The baby came on a warm April morning after a long night of labor. Ryder was beside himself with worry, pacing the kitchen while the midwife and doctor worked with Teresa. Her screams tore at him, made him want to break down the door and demand they do something, anything to stop her pain. But finally, just as the sun was rising, he heard a new sound. The thin, reedy cry of a newborn. The midwife opened the door, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Vance. A healthy boy." Ryder stumbled into the bedroom, his eyes going immediately to Teresa. She was pale and exhausted, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, but she was smiling. And in her arms, wrapped in a blanket, was a tiny red-faced baby. "Come meet your son," Teresa said softly. Ryder approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. The baby was so small, so fragile-looking. When Teresa placed him in Ryder's arms, he was terrified he would drop him. "He is perfect," Ryder said, his voice breaking. "He has your eyes," Teresa said. "Look." The baby blinked up at him, and Ryder saw it was true. The same gray-blue eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. His son. "What should we name him?" Teresa asked. They had discussed names for months but had never settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Ryder knew. "Thomas," he said. "Thomas Ryder Vance, after his uncle." Tears filled Teresa's eyes. "Thomas. Yes, that is perfect." Baby Thomas proved to be a healthy, loud infant with a strong set of lungs. He kept them up at night and demanded constant attention, but neither Ryder nor Teresa minded. They were both utterly besotted with their son. Ryder found himself doing things he never would have imagined. Changing diapers, walking the floor at 2 in the morning with a crying baby, singing lullabies in his rough, off-key voice. Teresa would wake to find him sitting in the rocking chair, little Thomas asleep on his chest, and she would smile at the picture they made. The ranch thrived despite the new addition, or perhaps because of it. Ryder hired another hand to take up the slack while he and Teresa adjusted to parenthood. Teresa managed to keep up with the books, working while Thomas napped, and Ryder made sure to come in from the field several times a day to check on them both. When Thomas was 6 months old, they received word that Cobb Donnelly had been killed in a shootout with a Texas Ranger. The rest of his gang had scattered, and the threat that had loomed over them for so long was finally gone. "It is really over," Teresa said that night, holding Thomas while he nursed. "We are safe." "We were always safe," Ryder said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I would never have let anything happen to you, I know, but it is different not having that hanging over us." Teresa looked down at their son, love suffusing her face. "I want him to grow up without fear, without always looking over his shoulder." "He will," Ryder promised. "We will make sure of it." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, Ryder marveled at how much his life had changed. 2 years ago he had been alone, content with his solitary existence. Now he could not imagine life without Teresa and Thomas. They were his whole world. On their second wedding anniversary, Ryder surprised Teresa with a gift. He had been working on it for months, in the rare moments when he had time to himself. "Close your eyes," he told her, leading her out to the barn. "Ryder, what are you up to?" Teresa asked, but she was smiling. "Just trust me." He positioned her carefully, then told her to open her eyes. In front of her was a beautiful wooden cradle, hand-carved with intricate designs. Flowers and vines wound around the sides, and on the headboard he had carved their initials and Thomas's name. "I know we already have a cradle for Thomas," Ryder said, suddenly nervous, "but I thought for the next one, whenever that might be." Teresa turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "It is beautiful, the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," Ryder said. "And I wanted to make something with my hands that would last, that would be here for our children and our children's children." Teresa threw her arms around him, and he held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I have something to tell you," Teresa said, her voice muffled against his chest. "I was going to wait, but now seems like the right time." Ryder pulled back, looking at her. "What? We are going to need that cradle sooner than you think." Teresa smiled, radiant with joy. "I am pregnant again." This time, the pregnancy was easier. Teresa was not as sick, and she was able to stay active longer. She and Ryder would take long walks in the evenings, Thomas toddling between them, talking about the future and making plans. "I want a big family," Teresa said one night. "I was so lonely as a child with just Thomas. I want our children to have siblings, to have each other." "How many children are we talking about?" Ryder asked, amused. I do not know. 4, 5, however many we are blessed with. Teresa looked at him, suddenly anxious. Is that too many? It is perfect, Ryder said, pulling her close. As long as I have you, everything is perfect. Their second child, a daughter, was born on a snowy December morning. She came faster than Thomas had, and by the time the midwife arrived, Teresa had already done most of the work herself. Ryder caught his daughter, his hands shaking with awe and wonder. A girl, he said, staring down at the tiny, perfect face. We have a daughter. They named her Caroline after Teresa's mother, and she proved to be as different from Thomas as night from day. Where Thomas was loud and demanding, Caroline was quiet and content. She would lie in her cradle for hours, watching the world with serious dark eyes. Thomas was enchanted with his baby sister, constantly wanting to hold her and help take care of her. Ryder would find him standing by the cradle, telling Caroline stories in his toddler babble, and his heart would swell with love for his children. Life settled into a new rhythm. The ranch continued to prosper, and Ryder and Teresa talked about buying more land, expanding their operation even further. They hired a woman from town to help with the children a few days a week, giving Teresa time to focus on the business side of things. I never thought I could be this happy, Teresa told Ryder one night after they had put the children to bed. When Thomas died, when you told me we had to marry, I thought my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my days trapped in a loveless marriage, just going through the motions. And now, Ryder asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear it anyway. Now I know what real happiness is, what real love is. Teresa cupped his face in her hands. You gave me that, Ryder, you and our children. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. You gave me the same thing, Ryder said. I was existing before you, not really living. You made me fall in love, made me want things I had never wanted before. A family, a future. You changed everything. They kissed, slow and deep, and Ryder felt the familiar heat building between them. Even after years of marriage, 2 children, and countless nights together, he still wanted her with an intensity that sometimes surprised him. They made love that night with the quiet passion of long familiarity, knowing each other's bodies as well as they knew their own. Afterward, lying tangled together, Ryder thought about the journey that had brought them here. He had married Teresa out of duty, a promise made to a dying friend, but she had made him fall in love out of everything else. Her strength, her intelligence, her kindness. The way she laughed at his jokes and challenged his assumptions. The way she had taken a marriage of convenience and turned it into a real partnership, a true union. He had thought he was doing her a favor, offering her protection and safety. But she had given him so much more. She had given him a home, a family, a reason to wake up each morning with joy instead of just obligation. I love you, he whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Teresa murmured, already half asleep. Always. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. They had 2 more children, another boy they named Robert and a girl they named Grace. The ranch grew to be one of the most successful in the territory, known for its quality horses and well-managed cattle herd. Thomas grew into a serious boy with his father's quiet strength and his mother's quick mind. Caroline was gentle and kind, always the peacemaker between her more rambunctious siblings. Robert was all energy and mischief, constantly getting into trouble. And Grace, the baby, was sweet and affectionate, wrapping everyone around her little finger. Ryder and Teresa aged together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their arguments, their difficult times, but they always came back to each other, always found their way through. When Teresa turned 40, Ryder took her on a trip to Santa Fe, their first time away from the ranch and children in years. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate in restaurants, and wandered the streets hand in hand like young lovers. You ever regret it? Teresa asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their hotel balcony. Marrying me, taking on all the responsibility. Ryder looked at her, this woman who had been his wife for 18 years, who had given him 4 children and more happiness than he had ever thought possible. Not for one single second, he said firmly. Marrying you was the best thing I ever did, even if I did it for the wrong reasons at first. I do not think they were the wrong reasons, Teresa said thoughtfully. You married me out of duty, out of loyalty to Thomas, and out of a desire to help someone in need. Those are not bad reasons. They are good reasons. But I did not love you then. No, but you were the kind of man who could learn to love, who could open his heart. Teresa smiled at him, and he saw the girl she had been in the woman she had become. I think Thomas knew that. I think that is why he asked you to marry me, because he knew you would not just protect me, but that you would eventually care for me. He was a smart man, your brother. He was. And he loved us both. Teresa leaned her head on Ryder's shoulder. I wish he could have seen what we built together. The ranch, the children. I think he would have been proud. I know he would have been, Ryder said, wrapping his arm around her. Proud of you especially. Look at what you have accomplished. You have helped build an empire. We built it together, Teresa corrected. I could not have done any of it without you. They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, comfortable in the silence, secure in their love. When they returned to the ranch, the children swarmed them, full of stories about what had happened while they were gone. Thomas, now 18 and nearly as tall as his father, had managed the ranch hands with competence. Caroline, 16, had kept the house running smoothly. Robert, 14, sheepishly admitted to breaking a window playing ball, and Grace, just 10, showed them the new dress she had sewn herself. Ryder looked around at his family, at the ranch he and Teresa had built, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was his legacy. Not just the land or the horses or the money. His children, his marriage, the love he and Teresa had built from the ashes of duty and necessity. Papa, are you crying? Grace asked, staring up at him with worried eyes. Just happy, Ryder said, scooping her up despite her protests that she was too old to be carried. I am just very, very happy. Over the next few years, the children grew and began making their own paths. Thomas took over more and more of the ranch management, showing the same steady competence his father had. He courted and married a nice girl from town, and within a year, gave Ryder and Teresa their first grandchild. Holding his grandson, Ryder thought about the cradle he had carved years ago, the one that had held all 4 of his children. It would hold this baby too, and hopefully many more grandchildren to come. Caroline surprised everyone by wanting to go to college back east. Ryder was reluctant at first, worried about his gentle daughter in the big city, but Teresa convinced him to let her go. She is smart and capable, Teresa said. We raised her to be independent. We have to let her fly. So Caroline went off to study teaching, writing long letters home about her classes and the exciting new ideas she was learning. She came back every summer, full of stories and enthusiasm, and Ryder was proud of the strong, educated woman she was becoming. Robert decided he wanted to be a veterinarian, fascinated by the animals on the ranch. He apprenticed with Dr. Morrison, learning everything the old doctor could teach him about treating livestock and horses. Eventually, he would go to veterinary school, but for now, he was content to learn through hands-on experience. And Grace, sweet Grace, showed a talent for art. She was constantly drawing and painting, capturing the beauty of the New Mexico landscape in ways that took Ryder's breath away. Teresa encouraged her, buying her supplies and setting up a small studio in one of the unused rooms. Through it all, Ryder and Teresa stood together, partners in every sense of the word. They celebrated their children's triumphs and comforted them through their failures. They managed the ranch through good times and bad, droughts and plenty. They grew older together, gray creeping into their hair, lines forming around their eyes. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. Half the town of Chloride showed up, along with people from neighboring ranches. There was music and dancing and food, and Ryder found himself overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and respect. "You two are an inspiration," one of the neighbors told him. "The way you built this ranch together, raised your children. You are what marriage should be." Ryder looked across the yard to where Teresa was laughing with a group of women, and his heart swelled. She was 50 now, her dark hair streaked with silver, her face lined with the years. But to him, she was as beautiful as the day she had stepped off that stage, scared and grieving and trying so hard to be brave. He made his way through the crowd to her side, and she turned to him with a smile that lit up her whole face. "Dance with me," he said, holding out his hand. "Always," Teresa replied, taking it. They danced as the sun set over the New Mexico desert, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends. And as Ryder held his wife close, he thought about the strange path that had brought them here. He had married her out of duty, a solemn promise made to a dying friend. He had expected it to be a burden, a responsibility he would shoulder because he was a man of his word. But Teresa had made him fall in love out of everything else. Her courage in the face of loss. Her determination to make a life for herself, despite impossible circumstances. Her kindness and intelligence and the way she never gave up, no matter how hard things got. She had taken his lonely house and made it a home. She had taken his solitary existence and filled it with laughter and love. She had given him children and purpose and a reason to be grateful for every single day. "What are you thinking about?" Teresa asked, looking up at him with those amber eyes that still took his breath away. "About how lucky I am," Ryder said honestly. "About how a promise made to a dying friend gave me the greatest gift of my life." "I am the lucky one," Teresa said. "You could have married me and resented me forever. You could have done the bare minimum and left me to fend for myself. But you did not. You opened your heart to me, even when you did not have to. You loved me, even when I was just a duty." "You were never just a duty," Ryder said fiercely. "Maybe at first for a moment, but from the second I saw you step off that stage, something in me knew you were going to be important. Knew you were going to change everything." "We changed each other," Teresa said. "That is what love does. It transforms us into better versions of ourselves." They kissed, oblivious to the cheers and whistles from their children and friends. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. The party went on long into the night, but eventually people began to drift away. Their children helped clean up, then headed to their own homes, leaving Ryder and Teresa alone on the porch, watching the stars come out. 25 years, Teresa said softly. "It does not feel like that long." "It feels like a lifetime," Ryder countered. "A good lifetime, the best kind." "Do you ever think about Thomas?" Teresa asked. "About what he would think of all this, all the time," Ryder admitted. "I like to think he is somewhere watching and that he is happy with how things turned out. He asked me to protect you, but you did not need protecting. You needed a partner, and somehow we figured out how to be that for each other." "He knew," Teresa said with certainty. "Thomas knew you were the right man, not just to keep me safe, but to make me happy. He knew you had the capacity for love, even if you did not know it yourself." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the desert night unfold around them. The years continued to pass, gentler now. Thomas took over the full operation of the ranch, allowing Ryder to step back and enjoy a slower pace of life. Caroline returned from college and opened a school in Chloride, teaching the children of miners and ranchers alike. Robert finished his veterinary training and set up practice in town, quickly becoming the go-to person for any animal ailment. And Grace moved to Santa Fe to pursue her art, but visited often, bringing home paintings that Ryder and Teresa hung proudly on their walls. More grandchildren came, filling the ranch with laughter and energy. Ryder loved being a grandfather, loved spoiling the little ones and then handing them back to their parents when they got fussy. He and Teresa would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching their grandchildren play, marveling at how their family had grown. "We made this," Teresa would say sometimes, awe in her voice. "All of this from a marriage that started with a promise." "The best promise I ever made," Ryder would reply. They grew old together, their steps slower, their hair white, but their love as strong as ever. They held hands on the porch, took short walks around the property, and told their grandchildren stories of the old days. When Ryder was 65, he had a health scare that frightened them both. His heart was not as strong as it used to be, the doctor said. He needed to take it easy, not overexert himself. "I am not ready," Teresa told him that night, tears streaming down her face. "I am not ready to lose you." "You are not going to lose me," Ryder promised, holding her close. "I am too stubborn to die, and I have too much to live for." He recovered, but it was a reminder that their time was not infinite. They began to talk more about the past, sharing memories and stories, making sure their children knew where they came from. "Tell us about how you met," the grandchildren would beg, and Ryder and Teresa would share the story. About Thomas's dying request, about the marriage of convenience that became something so much more. "Your grandfather married me out of duty," Teresa would say, "but I made him fall in love out of everything else." "What does that mean?" the children would ask. "It means love is not always something that happens in an instant," Ryder would explain. "Sometimes it grows slowly, building on friendship and respect and shared experiences. Sometimes the best loves are the ones you work for, the ones you choose every single day." "Did you choose Grandma every day?" one of the grandchildren asked once. "Every single day," Ryder said firmly, "and I would do it again 1,000 times over." On a warm spring evening, when Ryder was 72 and Teresa was 70, they sat on the porch watching the sunset, just as they had done thousands of times before. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving under their son's management. Their children were happy and successful. Their grandchildren were growing strong and smart. "We did good," Teresa said softly. "We did," Ryder agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." "I love you, Ryder Vance. I have loved you for so long, I cannot remember what it was like not to love you." "I love you too, Teresa. You are my heart, my soul, my everything. You always have been, from the moment I stopped being stubborn enough to admit it." They sat in peaceful silence as the sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. The desert stretched out before them, beautiful and harsh and home. "Do you have any regrets?" Teresa asked. Ryder thought about it, really thought about the life he had lived, the choices he had made. "Not a single one," he said finally. "Except maybe that I did not tell you I loved you sooner. That I wasted time being cautious when I could have been loving you with my whole heart." "We had our whole lives together," Teresa said. "That was enough, more than enough. It was everything." "It was," Ryder agreed. "It is." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, holding hands, watching the world they had built together. The ranch that had started as a simple homestead and grown into something remarkable. The family that had sprung from a marriage of duty and blossomed into a legacy of love. Years later, when Ryder was 80 and Teresa was 78, They celebrated their 55th wedding anniversary surrounded by 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. The ranch house was full to bursting with family, and Ryder had never been happier. 55 years, Thomas, their eldest, said, raising a glass in toast. To 2 people who showed us all what real love looks like, what commitment means, what family is. Everyone raised their glasses, and Ryder looked at Teresa, seeing in her aged face the beautiful, scared young woman who had stepped off the stage all those years ago. She smiled at him, and he saw the same love in her eyes that had been there for decades. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Ryder and Teresa sat in their bedroom, the room they had shared for over 50 years. "I have had a good life," Ryder said. "The best life, and it is all because of you." "We gave each other good lives," Teresa corrected gently. "That is what love does. It multiplies the good and divides the bad." They climbed into bed together, settling into the familiar comfort of each other's presence. Ryder wrapped his arms around Teresa, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I am not afraid," she said softly, "of whatever comes next, because I know we will face it together, just like we have faced everything else." "Together," Ryder agreed, "always together." They lived several more years, growing frailer but never losing the connection that bound them. When Ryder was 85, he died peacefully in his sleep, Teresa's hand in his. She followed him 6 months later, unable to bear being without him after so many years together. They were buried side by side on the hillside overlooking the ranch, not far from where Thomas Easton had been laid to rest all those decades ago. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered to say goodbye, sharing stories and tears and laughter. The ranch continued, passed down through the generations, a testament to what Ryder and Teresa had built together. The story of how they met, how they married out of duty and fell in love out of everything else, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And on summer evenings, when the sun set over the New Mexico desert painting the sky in brilliant colors, some said you could still see them there on the porch. 2 figures sitting side by side, holding hands, watching over the family and the land they had loved so well. Their love had started with a promise made to a dying friend, but it had grown into something eternal, something that transcended time and death, and lived on in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by it. Ryder had married Teresa out of duty, a solemn obligation he had never expected to bring him joy, but she had made him fall in love out of everything else. Her strength, her kindness, her courage, the way she had taken his lonely existence and filled it with purpose and passion. The way she had shown him that love was not just something that happened to you, but something you chose every single day through good times and bad. Together, they had built a life that neither could have imagined alone. A life full of love and laughter and family. A life that proved that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. That duty and love are not opposites, but can work together to create something beautiful. Their story became a reminder to their descendants that real love is not just about passion or romance, though they had plenty of both. It is about choosing each other, day after day, year after year. It is about growing together instead of apart. It is about taking what starts as obligation and transforming it through patience and kindness into something that lasts forever. The ranch stood for generations, a monument to what they had created. The house they had shared was preserved, becoming a gathering place for family celebrations and milestones. The cradle Ryder had carved held dozens of babies over the years, each one a new branch on the family tree. And in Chloride, New Mexico territory, the story of Ryder and Teresa Vance was told as an example of what marriage could be. Not a fairy tale of love at first sight, but something better. A real story of two people who found each other in tragedy and chose to build something beautiful from it. Ryder had made a promise to a dying friend, and in keeping that promise, he had found the love of his life. Teresa had married a stranger out of necessity, and in doing so had discovered a partner who would cherish her for the rest of her days. They had taken duty and turned it into devotion. They had taken convenience and transformed it into commitment. They had started with obligation and ended with a love so deep and true that it became the foundation for generations to come. And that, their descendants would say, was the greatest love story of all. Not because it was easy or simple or without challenges, but because it was real. Because it showed that love is not just something you feel, but something you do, something you choose, something you build one day at a time until it becomes as solid and enduring as the New Mexico earth itself.